Most of you, I'm sure, by now have heard that, and have seen probably multiple news reports on the horrible bombing that took place in Boston yesterday at the marathon. At this point, 176 people injured, 17 of whom are still in critical condition, 3 dead, an 8-year-old amongst that dead, 8-year-old boy. The bombing took place at about 2:50 yesterday in Boston. Yesterday, Patriots Day. It's a holiday in Massachusetts, and there's also the Red Sox play a morning game traditionally. Got out at about 2:00. The marathon was about 4 hours into the marathon, and so you had the majority of runners had come across the line, but there were still thousands to come. Approximately 23,000 runners in the race, about 3/4 of whom had already crossed the finish line, so there was still anywhere from 6,000 to 10,000 who had yet to cross the finish line. The national media had stopped their coverage of the race, and but there was still obviously a lot of local media, and there was still tons of people there. 2 bombs went off. One about 10 seconds after the first. The first one was yards away from the finish line. The second bomb went off on the same side of the street, but about a block west of the first bomb. The limitations of this program are such that we don't really have the ability to bring you any news that you're not aware of if you're seeking information on a story like this. And we don't have access to reporters. They're reporting for their outlets at this point. There's simply not a lot of information that this show can provide, particularly because many of you listen to it in a delayed fashion. At this point, there's really no indication of who is responsible or why. The authorities are now saying that the bombs themselves were fairly crude in terms of their technology. Contrary to the first reports, there were no other bombs that were found undetonated. There were reports early on that there was a device in a fire at the JFK library, and I can tell you, I was listening to the police scanners, and the cops thought it was an incendiary device. And of course, it gets reported, and then it's found that it wasn't the case. So there's obviously, always at the first reports of these things are always pretty questionable. But, what we're telling you now has been more or less confirmed, but there's not much that's been confirmed. The president just spoke again for the second time since the bombing about a half an hour ago. He called this, in the second address, he called this an act of terror as opposed to terrorism. This is not that is a specific distinction. The president is saying act of terror as opposed to terrorism because terrorism is actually has some legal definition. Some legal definition in the context of law enforcement in this country. The FBI, or via the FBI.gov, 28 CFR section 0.85, there's no single universally accepted definition of terrorism. Terrorism is defined in the Code of Federal Regulations as, and that's CFR, the, quote, the unlawful use of force and violence against persons or property to intimidate or coerce a government, the civilian population, or any segment thereof in furtherance of a political or social objectives. So in other words, terrorism is violence that is aimed at civilians with a more or less political objective. It's possible that the perpetrators of this bombing, or the perpetrator of this bombing, did so because they're just crazy. Which is not to say that the people who did this are not crazy by definition, but are just crazy with no other, even internally coherent objective other than to see people die, other than to see things explode, other than to feel like they had some type of power to create this type of horror.